Okay, welcome back to the Desert Harvest. We talk about the culinary bounty that's here in Arizona. I'm here with my partner in crime, Oren Molovinsky. Oren, how you holding up?
I'm doing good, Pete. For opening a new restaurant and figuring all those aspects out, we're doing fairly well.
You have broad shoulders, man, making time for podcasts. I think you cutting the ribbon at Barrio Bagel and Slice tomorrow. I mean, that's amazing.
Well, when you called me, I was literally making sandwiches. That's how good we've dated. It's not.
Well, it's an amazing time for, the culinary scene in Arizona. It's an amazing time for science too. I mean, you've been following all these rocket launches and whatnot.
Nope, no rocket launches on my end.
Oh, that was like their
At the film
restaurants.
going
Yeah,
on.
yeah, the restaurant culture is going intergalactic. They're putting a restaurant on the moon. They said the food is really good, but it kind of lacked atmosphere. So
That's good, Pete. I like it.
all right. Well, that's as good as I got here on short notice. Warren, you and I are lucky. We get a chance to talk to extraordinary people. And this week we have another extraordinary person who's spending time with us. So I feel lucky that he was interested in having a conversation because he's got a real close perspective on the things that are important to us. He's been a close observer to the Arizona culinary scene and has documented that through some pretty incredible books. I know you've given away his books maybe more than you've given away any other books, and you're a book giver awayer. So,
Yeah.
Mr. Eric Walters, thank you for making time for us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm very excited. Yeah, I'm honored to talk. I think I talk well. So
Good.
a lot of
Good. At least someone around here can talk well.
Yeah, right.
Thank God he's with
I
us.
just think I go to stay back here at like environment.
Well, Eric, I mean, there's a lot of ways in which we could dive into your perspective and expertise. I mean, you've done a lot, I think, to express some of the specialness of Arizona, and it's something that's important to Oren and I that we're um, we're giving a chance for people to learn about how incredible Arizona is, from everything from agriculture up into these extraordinary culinary experiences. And so I just wanted to begin with a question about your perspective on the Arizona culinary scene, and maybe begin with this, like what's underappreciated about the Arizona culinary scene? What are people missing out there?
I think call it the Arizona culinary scene in general, right? You see these national awards and international awards and the best cities for food and the best cities for beer and stuff like that. And it's rare you get Arizona, Phoenix, the Verde Valley mentioned in those conversations. So I think on a national scale, I think that Arizona food and beverage is very underappreciated. Um, you know, I moved here in 2007. So, I don't have a long history in the state, but from what I understand, it was kind of a testing ground for some of the chains, right? There was population, it's a diverse population. So they would test out these, it was chain heaven kind of, right? So it didn't really have this personality. But since I've moved here and really since I've started, on the content side of things, starting in 2015 with the beer podcast, I've really seen it like come into its own of, really showing, and not that it's, I mean, this stuff has been here literally for thousands of years, right? Like that's what I love about, the Arizona scene, like Tucson specifically, the city of gastronomy, is, I mean, it's based off of thousands of years of agriculture. So
Right.
it's like the Phoenix, rising from the ashes. It's almost like Arizona is like, hey, we've had this culture here for a long time, and now it's kind of starting to find itself again. Uh, places like Bacanora and the Spiritu and
Yeah.
these places that are really bringing back, um, you know, indigenous cuisine and like focusing on what grows here, like what is naturally grown here and what thrives here. And, all the stuff from like people are saying like, we should have palm trees here, right? Palm trees didn't grow in the desert. we,
Right.
we put those there. So that's kind of how I got interested in the food side of things was, I met, I don't know if you guys, either of you know Tamara Stanger, Chef Tamara.
Oh yeah, I've heard of her. Yes, I don't know her very well though, but I've met her at least once. Yeah.
She's a good guest for this one. That's a guest I would recommend. So uh, I first met her. She was the chef at Helio Basin Brewing. And I wasn't really interested in the food side of things. I was more kind of in the beer side. But when I met her and I met, she kind of talked about her philosophy and making and like foraging mesquite pods and, wolfberries and boya buds and all these things that grow here. And she would forage, like she'd, hop over somebody's fence and pick some stuff, and then that would go on her menu the next day. And it really like lit off, set off a light bulb in my head, like, wow, this is really cool because I always thought food as, if you were going to really get into the culinary side of content, it was going to be fine dining. That was my limited view. And I'm like, I'm not really interested in fine dining. But then Tamara opened up a whole world for me. And I'm like, oh man, this is cool. Like this is rugged. This is Arizona.
Yeah.
And it really just, it kind of snowballed from there. But I don't even know if I answered your original question.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're in agreement, right? We feel like there's the underappreciation is global in scope of what's going on here. And I'm curious
Yeah.
if you had somebody coming from a big city, a non-Arizona big city perspective, and they were going to go to Arizona. What do you think would be the most surprising? If they had, hey, I'm coming from New York, Chicago, LA, pick your, traditional city that might have a very high opinion of itself and that. What do you think they'd be the most surprised of if they had someone like you to show them what was the best of Arizona they could find?
I mean, I would probably
Where would you
say
take them? Yeah.
ooh, where would I take them? As funny as it sounds, like Chula Seafood is one, right? Who knows, you could get incredible seafood here in the desert. But Chula Seafood kind of really highlights what we love about food and beverage in the sense of their story, right?
Right.
When we do our podcast, and really from day one with a beer podcast, it was never about reviewing. It was never about critiquing or saying, oh, their beer is a 4.5 out of 5. We're going to go and taste all these things. It was more about what's the story? Like,
Yeah.
what is the heart and soul behind? Why did, Michael Marquis quit his job as an appraiser to start Mother Road Brewing, right? Why did, Brett Vibber, he was a Boy Scout and a wrestler, and then he became this incredible chef, and now he's here, foraging and doing all this crazy stuff. So, I would say like somewhere like a Chula Seafood would be a great place to surprise somebody.
Yeah.
Like, you want some of the best seafood you've ever had. It's in the desert. Go check out Chula Seafood.
Yeah.
Right? But a place like Bacanora or Spiritu that are, they're making, Sonoran food. They're making this really good food that's kind of, unique to this area, right? Or, that's from this area. And they're kind of turning the clock back a little bit, right? Cooking over fire, doing stuff outside and using the ingredients, right? Using the ingredients that either grow well here, because I think that's a big surprise. My brother-in-law is a farmer in Ohio.
Right.
And when he came out here, he's like, there's a ton of farm. No, like it's, if you can irrigate, if you can get water to it, like you can grow pretty much anything. But I think it's really cool that there are a lot of places and a lot of like organizations that are focusing on like what is indigenous here, like what is meant to grow here.
Right.
Right. Through the beer podcast, I did a few episodes with the Audubon Society. And Stephen was just really, the way he kind of presented how it all kind of comes together, and how, they're encouraging people to have plants in their yard that are indigenous to this region that are meant to grow here, which then, bring in birds from, then the birds can the Arizona Wilderness downtown has their, I think the Audubon Society installed that in their beer garden. I don't even remember what it's called, but it attracts like native insects and native birds. That's what I think is really cool. Is kind of going, not forcing things, but letting what happen, what's natural here
Yeah.
and what thrives here.
And I
Yeah.
think you get I think, to echo what you're saying, there's a license in a sense, there's a license to do that, to have that creativity, like you mentioned Bacanora and Espiritu, but it's like welcomed here. And I feel like when I have out of town guests come in, a lot of my colleagues come from the Midwest, and so Wichita, Kansas, even parts of Texas, and you take them to some of the local spots, and it's like it's kind of dressed down a little bit. I know there's some really nice places in town, but I feel like there's this license to just do the things that feel right with your heritage and the community, like you're talking about. And it's something that I come from the East Coast, Washington D.C. area, where everything's kind of a copy of something else. Like there's no real local cuisine, so to speak. Where here, I really feel there is, and that's something special that I appreciate as a restaurateur here, is that you can really connect with the ingredients and the land, and it feels natural, and it tastes better. I think
Yeah,
Yeah, they without a
for sure.
doubt. I mean, as someone who is from New York originally, I think that the the folks that haven't lived in the Southwest may have an association with with a Sonoran Desert being not a place that you would find the most flavorful things, because I think they think of it in terms of, a dryness, just thematically. And
Yeah,
what I think it has, um, I think what would surprise people the most is how sumptuous that cuisine is. When you're talking about using things indigenous to the area and all that, it sometimes I think it feels like an act of virtue, like, oh, well, we're having something that doesn't taste as good as we would like it, but it's local, so we're okay with it. And what
yeah,
have always contended is that the best food, it also it has the highest and most incredible flavor profile, and also has the healthiest um, result on the human body. And I mean, Oren, you guys, you're doing that writ large with sort of your vertical integration with Arizona grains as well. I mean, let's
yeah.
make sure we don't distract ourselves from Eric. Maybe you could take a second just to amplify what he's talking about with
Yeah,
Oreo
well,
Bagel and Slices
yeah,
intentions.
Eric has a great relationship with Don Guerra, and that's a great example of, all of Don's breads are made with grains from here in the state, and you could taste it in the bread. I mean, it's just a different terroir, and I think that
Yeah.
translates not just into what Don's doing with breads, but we've done quite a few wine episodes, and
Yes.
Eric, I'm sure you've been following the wine scene here, and the just some of the varietals we're putting out, from here, just they're different and they're very unique. It reminds me of when, Willamette Valley and some of those Oregon Pinots were first getting hot, and there was something different about them. And I feel like that's what we have, is our own terroir and our own flavor. And what Pete and I have talked a lot about, and it'd be interesting to hear your perspective on this, is how our culinarians in our state, uh, taking advantage of those resources, and who's doing a great job with it. What could we be doing more of with
Mm.
that? Because we live in the world, like Arizona Wilderness is right next door to us, and they do a great job.
yeah,
And but so I kind of live in that circle. Pete does, you do, Don does, but to the average, Phoenician, what should they be looking for, and how do you think we're doing as a state in bringing the best of our resources to the plate?
yeah. Well, Arizona Wilderness right there. I mean, you nailed it with them, like what they do. I mean, everything that they do, right? Uh, I went and, what was it, 2018, 2019. I took a trip to Austin, Texas with some friends. And Chris, he's from there. So he's like, oh, you got to check out Jester. So we went to Jester King, and it blew my mind. Completely changed the way I looked at beer, because at one point they were nothing but spontaneous fermentation, right? So everything was inoculated. It would, have the wort in this giant trough on the second story, and they would open the windows, and all of those natural, microbes and all that would get into the beer, and that's what would inoculate the beer, right? Instead of a controlled yeast. So coming back to Arizona, that I really, and there's not a lot of people doing that, because it's a hard thing to do, right? Because these, brewers yeast and the yeast you use for IPAs and ales and lagers, very controlled, right? Wild yeast, fly, right? You know, they have your whole system, like your lines are all similar now. So I understand why a lot of people don't get into it, but Arizona Wilderness is one that did. And some of my favorite episodes that I have ever done podcast wise was I took 2 trips with Arizona Wilderness when they did the camp pool ship. So they would take the wort from their beer, put it in these huge tanks, and then drive it up into the mountains. And one time it was like outside of, is it Silver King? Is that a place out past Globe, I think? Oh, and then another time was like by Stoneman Lake. And so they would basically then take this wort and dump it into this big open trough. And then we would party throughout the night. This wort is sitting there, and all this wild, the wilderness guys, you know how they are. They're doing like a cheers and a chant and all this stuff to bless the beer or whatever. And then this would turn into a sour beer, like on purpose sour beer.
Right.
And it had that, like wine, it had that sense of place to it. And there was, it was like, what was great about Wilderness too is, they use nothing but Sinagua malt, which is another incredible thing that, I don't know if you guys are aware, you guys know about Sinagua malt.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I brew Wilderness. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, so they basically, long story short, they convinced farmers in the Verde Valley to replace, put barley instead of alfalfa. Alfalfa is really, dependent on, like, really sucks up a lot of water, where barley is a lot better for,
Right.
the water conservation. So, but they need you need a customer for that. So Wilderness is like, hey, you guys grow this barley and malt it, and we'll buy it. So now it's grown and malted here in Arizona, and then, they use it. So, and the same thing with, down by Hidden Flour Mills with Sossaman Farms with Grain R&D. They're, bringing back these heritage grains and these ancient grains that, grew here for forever. And now, so you're getting a real sense of place with these things. But as you can see, I kind of go all over the place. I see the questions.
Well, no, that's great. I mean, I think that interconnection between what you or and I will refer to it frequently as the virtuous cycle, right? The notion of that barley planted where barley is better suited for that area relative to alfalfa produces the chain. By the time it ends up in somebody's glass, lots of good things have happened out of it. And I feel like the product that comes out of that, it's not just something that is like good in principle, but is best for you and tastes the best. And that, I'm curious, I mean, as somebody who's got such deep knowledge on like Arizona's culinary scene for, a long time now, if you were to kind of talk about the trends you've been observing in terms of how restaurants curate both their experiences and, obviously anything that might speak to how they integrate their supply chain. I think Wilderness is a great example of being very mindful of where does the things come from that ultimately make their beer. But what have you seen becoming more and more prominent in the last 5 or 10 years that makes us who we are out here in Arizona?
It's a great question. I know you guys give me a few of these questions before, and that got the wheels turning for sure. Because it's sometimes they're making a decision based on like what is the best fit for what we want to execute with our restaurant, right? So somebody I think about like pretty decent concepts. They have, they just opened up Filthy Animal in Tempe. They've got, um, um, Red and Wolf. They've got Chico Malo, so, and Carry On. I don't know if you guys have seen Carry On. Their cocktail bar is one of the
Mhm.
worst cocktail bars that they
Oh,
could get
yes.
on a plane.
Yeah.
Uh, it's incredible. It's that, it's not really Arizona focused, but I'm starting to see a lot of places, a lot of concept type of organizations that are opening up multiple places, right? And they're kind of finding, it's kind of like that Sam Fox thing where he figured out some processes and you figured out some systems, but now you can kind of start to expand this. And so you're starting to find people who are finding success, and they're just getting a little bit more creative with, kind of using the template and the system that they're using to kind of expand, their I guess portfolio. And, and that's not necessarily Arizona focused, but what I do notice is are those places are a lot of using like Arizona grass raised beef, or they're doing something that they're using some ingredients or something that is, you know, local to Arizona for certain things, right? You can't do it for everything. And I think that is one of our limitations is, um, which once again, one of the reasons I really like craft beer, because you can do small batches of things and
Yeah.
really, like Old Ellsworth Brewery they do an olive beer with Queen Creek olive mill, right? And that's something cool that beer can do because you can make a small batch of it, and it's kind of a limited time type of thing, right?
Yeah.
The bigger brand, like I don't know, Budweiser couldn't do a little small batch of these olive
Yeah.
beers from a local place. So it gives, the breweries have that flexibility to be able to do those collaborations, use local ingredients, Arizona wilderness, foraging for, you know, pine cones or whatever it is that they're, juniper,
Yeah.
branches, dark sky using juniper branches. So
Mm.
I think a trend that I've seen is a lot more places are trying to explore how do we use indigenous ingredients? How do we do it? Because it's a tough balance, right? How do you do it, but be able to scale that? How do you do that and have it on the menu and have it available all the time?
Right, but
Uh,
I'd be curious how you feel about this because, I mean, well, one of the things that I feel like I'm observing in the culinary world that, I spend the most of my time in is a pretty high level of creativity that isn't worried about it having to fit into a certain box. Like, I think when I look at Arizona, and I've been in Arizona most of my life. I'm originally from New York, and so we've got, well, frankly, 40 or so years of watching things change. And I think what I'm observing, and I don't know if you would agree or not, but um, people trying to figure out new and innovative ways of doing things without being self-conscious, like it has to be. For example, if you say the word, hey, it's Southwestern, that evokes a certain thing. But what I
yeah,
feel like is being pushed back against that is that here in Arizona, we can be whatever we want to be.
yeah,
Like as opposed to having to fit into what other people's preconceived notions of what is the desert capable of producing. I mean, agriculturally, I don't know that 35, 40 years ago, someone would have said, well, Malbec wine, we're going to have some of the best Malbec wine, produced out of Sonoran County. But, sure enough,
yeah,
in today's world, we in fact do have that. Um, so for me locally, when I, having spent a lot of time in Central Phoenix, living down there, and now living out in Chandler for, much of the last 10 years, the flavor, both in terms of the food, but also in terms of the experience, is much more varied than it was in certainly the 80s and 90s from my perspective. Which which is quite wonderful for me. I mean, I don't know that,
yeah,
Bacanora probably would always have been successful, but I feel like that's a good example of, hey, there's a creative expression of, yes, the locality, but also hey, we're going to do this differently than it's been done before, and not necessarily fit in anybody else's model. Is that
Yeah.
okay? Yeah.
And Eric, I just as a follow-up piece, because I know you're getting ready to address that, is what are you seeing as it from your perspective, uh, as far as the trend of what we've done some episodes on what it's like to open a restaurant and
Yeah.
trying to give people a real understanding of it. Uh, I think that's important for someone who may really want to open a restaurant
Right.
and somebody who appreciates going out and dining, especially here in the Valley or in Tucson. So, what do you see as the the restaurants that are making it and really making a lasting impact versus restaurants that might be a flash in the pan? What are the trends you're seeing
Yeah.
specifically here in Arizona?
That's a really good question because, we've seen, some places that come from out of state, like there was the place that was in Scottsdale Quarter. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was from a group out of San Francisco, Arboleta. So Arboleta,
Yeah.
really nice restaurant, really good, came from, California, didn't, didn't last very long. Ambrosia 15, in California, opened up at the Biltmore, didn't last very long. So I feel like there is, I think that there's a temptation for people to come from outside place here. But for one reason or another, and I can't put my finger on it, it's there's something about Arizona. So, like I said, I moved here from Ohio in '07, and to me, there's always been like this ruggedness, and I've got this pride of being from Arizona. You got to be kind of tough, right? Like you have to. It's a little bit of a rugged place. You got to be tough, and so I think it's kind of interesting that places that have found success in other areas look at our market and they're like, oh, 4.8 million people. Heck yeah, I want to open a place there. But for one reason or another, it's not working out for them, right? But then you've got people that are, um, you get a lot of, I look at the, once again, to mention like Bacanora, like Chef Renee and, LT from Chilte and Devin from Feces on Central. There's a bunch of young people that are really getting together as a community, and they're doing, they obviously have their own restaurants, right? But it seems like a few times a month, they're getting together to collaborate to do a pop up at one of the person's restaurants, or they're doing a dinner at this place with a local lowrider company or an art exhibit or something like that, right? So that's one of the things that I'm starting. What I really like about the industry out here is the people are all kind of coming together to help each other,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're doing fun things together, right? They're doing things that are fresh, that are fun, and that are, especially when you look at the art, right? Like it's a dinner, it's a pop up dinner with LT and Renee, but the poster they have for it is super cool, and they got a local artist and local DJ, and it's a small little, it's not like they're doing anything like, man, this is incredible. You're making, sandwiches out of this, cat food. It's maybe not use stuff like that, but it's more of the collaboration and camaraderie, and that everybody kind of coming up together. And that's one of the things I love about the restaurant industry in general is, I grew up, my grandmother owned our restaurant in our small town. And so ever since then, I've just looked at the restaurant and the food and beverage as just this community of people that love to do what they do. Unfortunately, sometimes I think they do it, you know, they'll run themselves into the ground, and they won't make any money themselves, but they love doing what they do. So they continue to do it. Right. So, once again, I'm doing a good job, I think, of avoiding your question, but,
Well, no, I mean, for me, that the thoughtfulness, when I say creativity, I mean, that what informs my opinion about what does it mean to be creative is to have a thoughtful intention about what you're trying to accomplish. I mean, for me,
yeah,
like Silvana, it would be a great example of somebody who had a restaurant that had an intention behind it, executed superbly, created exquisite things, but there was a story, that as you talked about, right?
yep,
I mean, it was
yep,
informed by a lot of information, feeling that wasn't, you didn't have to know what it was, but when you walked through the door, it was there. And more, I'm finding that type of experience, which only happens, I think, with a very high level of sincerity, coupled with skill. I mean, I've been in places that are super sincere, but they're, it becomes kitschy if you don't have it underpinned with excellence. But I feel like more and more I'm walking into places where there's a lot of skill, a lot of knowledge, and it's being executed well. And it'll be interesting over time. I think if those as businesses thrive, the fabric of like what's going on here, I think, well, we will stop hopefully being underappreciated globally.
Well, so actually that you brought me full circle. So
Okay, good.
that would be my answer is story. Like, who are the people that are sharing a story? Who is it that has a story, and how are they sharing it? Right. Like with what we do, my business partner is really good at marketing. Um, and we've just kind of like the importance of story. And to me, I think story that, it's a buzzword these days. And I think sometimes people don't truly understand, like, oh yeah, tell a story, but then they don't really tell a story.
Right.
Right. But I think a lot of the successful restaurants, wineries, breweries, they've got a story. They're sharing their story, right? In a specific ingredient of like, oh yeah, we used, cholla buds for this, and we pickle them for, for a week, and then we put them on the salad. And so those little things are people like, oh, dude, like, so these were just like little buds on this before, and you pick. So those stories, I think that that's a big piece of it is, I know Chef Rene from Bacanora, like I'm pretty sure like his grandmother was a huge piece of, doing what he does. And so
Right.
an attachment to story and telling a story, and, you get these immersive cocktail bar experiences like Carry On or like Undertow. It's all story, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Undertow's menu is based off of the story of this adventure of these Caribbean pirates. And,
Right.
so just going into a place of, and it doesn't have to be a defined story. It doesn't have to be, oh, this guy came from this and he did this and this. Like a place like Bad Place, right? Like you walk into that place and you're like, all right, the person behind this dude's got a story. You walk in and this punk playing loud, the decor is cool. So yeah. So for me, I think that's a big piece of it. And that's what we focus on. And, I mean, the cover of our magazine is the stories of Arizona food and beverage. That's kind of our tagline.
So Eric, I think what is resonating with me right now is maybe not, it's a little bit of an overused word, but the authenticity of the great operators here, right? Like you talk about some of the iconic players in the Arizona food scene, Chris Bianco and what he's done. I mean, but that's a really authentic concept, right? It's not trying to be anything but, an expression of him and his community. And I think that to me, that's what seems to be working. What's interesting to me is, we live in somewhat of a, the Phoenix, Tucson is more, I think we could all agree is a little bit more, it's a city of gastronomy. It's a little bit more local friendly. They really support those restaurants. And when I was operating a national chain, when I would bring people in to look at locations in Tucson, they were all like from out of state. They were always like, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. But they didn't understand that it's not really it's not the visual appeal of the city. It's what's happening inside these little places that is really Tucson so special. And I think when you get in and you start experiencing that and you have that talent, you want to express it yourself. I know I did when I came here more so than I did even where I was in the restaurant business in Washington, D.C., where I felt like you were trying to create an experience that everybody would feel comfortable in or appreciate. Where here, I found I'm taken further out of my comfort zone. And as a result, I've learned a lot more and I appreciate I appreciate the cuisine. The I enjoy beer now more than I ever had before. And I grew up in Maryland when Dogfish Head was really coming up, and we had some great breweries out there. And then I came out here and I was like, man, that's nothing compared to what is going on out here. And it's just such a great, energetic vibe. So I guess as a follow-up question to what I asked before, if authenticity is driving success here, but Phoenix is also this like suburban sprawl type of city where people are looking for convenience, and how do you see that continuing? Do you see
Yeah.
authenticity continuing to play a role in the growth of Phoenix, or are the suburbs like Peoria, Chandler, Queen Creek, are you seeing more authentic concepts going into those markets, or are they more centralized in the urban areas like Phoenix, or what are you seeing with that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm starting to see places expand out into those suburbs, right? Like, so we're in North Phoenix, we're like in the Happy Valley area. Um, you're starting to see, um, like outdoor like Surprise, like a new Oto is opening.
Right.
I think there's a pedal house that's opening. So I think that you're like before with the concepts, like pretty decent concepts, right? Some of these places are starting to see these neighborhoods that have a potential and have a want for it, right? Like so where we're at, like we have a mellow mushroom, we have a pita jungle, um, so not some local chains, but not a lot of like kind of one off or those really destination type of places, right? Those are more concentrated in Old Town. They're more downtown, maybe Tempe. But I think that you're starting to kind of see those places open. Which I'm trying to convince Chula to open a spot up by us too. You know, so I think that they're starting to see those opportunities of okay, like almost like a proof of concept in a very tightly populated, high traffic area. And they're like, okay, there's a desire for this, right? People are coming from all around the valley, come to our place. So why don't we go to these other like locations, right? Um, and I start to see, you're starting to see kind of more of those like fast casual type of places, right? I don't know if you guys have ever been to Unique Burger. Have you been to Unique
I
Burger?
haven't tried that. No.
Yeah, UNIQ. So it's a plant-based burger, but it's kind of a fast casual place. It's local. It's in Scottsdale, I think. But I mean, I'm not like I'll be the first person to tell you like a non-meat burger to me, I'm like, good, right? But they're like, you gotta try a Unique Burger. And I did, and it was incredible. But it's a fast casual place, right? For me, I think that there's going to start to be more places like that. More places like, Bad Jimmy's is another place like that too. Have you guys been to Bad Jimmy's? And
Not yet.
Not yet.
it's incredible.
I've seen it online a lot, but yeah.
Yeah. And James, that Bad Jimmy's just won Best Burger at Food Awards. And, James Piazza, their owner, went up on stage and little speech. Dude's a rock star. I mean, he looks like a rock star. It's at 7 o'clock in the evening, and he's got his sunglasses on, and he's got his Ramones t-shirt. He plays the part, and it's authentic though.
Right.
You go into his place, and the music is playing. You see him, and you're like, this is the music he would be playing. He's not playing something that he thinks everybody's gonna like. He's like, this is my place. This is my vibe.
Right.
Come in, enjoy this incredible smash burger. But it's, you go up to the counter, order your food, they give you your number and you go back, which I think I like that. Like I like sitting down at a place, having a server and doing all this, having that experience. But a lot of times too, I would much rather go up to a counter, order something, and not have it necessarily be,
Yeah.
I like Chipotle, but not a Chipotle, not, a national chain, but like something that is local, that kind of fits that fast casual. Like I just want to go in, I can do my own thing, order my food, and I don't have to sit there and wait, completely served.
Well,
So
I mean,
yeah,
everywhere has a vibe. You've traveled a lot for food. So you mentioned Austin. And Austin has a vibe. And I feel like when you go there, you're kind of, as a visitor, you get immersed into that. You accept it. It's like, I want to be part of, what they've got going on, because it's so cool. And I think, yeah, it sounds like what you're talking about a little bit here is that we're kind of developing a vibe coming out of this suburban sprawl type of city or valley, and there's character, but the interesting thing is that maybe you moved out here a few years earlier before I did, but when I moved out here, and I've lived in the Gilbert Chandler area the whole time, I was it seemed very much like the average consumer was not interested in the authenticity. They were more interested in the convenience. And it sounds like what's happening now is these operators like Bad Jimmy's or others like them are tapping into, well, this is what the Phoenician in general likes, other than those little enclaves like downtown Phoenix and, some North Scottsdale where people are seeking out that exceptional experience or a unique experience. But in the suburb, it's like, how do we meet the customer where they want to be in their comfort zone, but deliver them a product that's uniquely Phoenix or Tucson or Arizona? And it sounds like that's kind of progressing right now. And hopefully that's something it's from what I've read of your publication and your posting online and your podcast, you're trying to really help emphasize that. And that we're it's a little bit of a meeting in the middle, so to speak. Doesn't have to be Spain, but it also doesn't have to be this vanilla, like vanilla concept either. There's a meeting in the middle there with the consumer.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be overly complicated, right? I think that was one of the things that COVID kind of, showed a lot of people was, first of all, like with beer, breweries, you don't have to do every event. You don't have to do every festival, right? You don't have to be everywhere. You don't have to be everything to everyone. But there's something about that fast casual aspect that you don't have to worry as much about, servers, and you don't have to worry as much about like staffing and all that, right? You can streamline it and you can still give people, which helps you then keep your costs down, right? Which then helps, keep the cost down for the consumer. And sometimes people don't want all those bells and whistles. They're like, hey, I just want, I've got 30 minutes for my lunch. I don't want to have to wait for a table necessarily. I just want to counter order something, so it's,
yeah. I mean, we like to bring up Danny Meyer as a debt of gratitude for kind of, creating that space where, certainly the ingredients that Danny Meyer and Shake Shack, put on the plate represented an elevated set of ingredients. And so it wasn't really a hamburger joint per se, but it wasn't a fine dining place, certainly, but it created, I think, that middle ground. And for me, like Taco Cello is a good example of, here's an incredibly well executed menu of extraordinary food in a more relaxed setting, and kind of, I think, makes the quality of that food more accessible in my mind from a price point, because he's using as fine ingredients as that's out there. Well, let's say we got somebody who's going to come in from out of Arizona. We want to suggest some reading materials. Why don't you talk about some of the things that somebody might come across that you've been a part of creating that could prepare them for, a proper visit to Arizona?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, we've got our book, right? We got A Taste of AZ. We put this out in January. I don't know if you can see that in the video, but
A Taste of AZ. There we go.
Yep. So must visit restaurants, bars, and more. We highlighted, I think, 62 places in this. This is volume 1. So we plan on, it's not a best of, it's not like, here are the 60 best places. It's like, here's, we couldn't do all the top ones in the first one, right? We gotta mix it up a little bit, leave room. But yeah, Don was in there from Barrio Brett. We featured him. But, so we tried to give a cross section of like, here's some of the great places to eat in Arizona. And, most of the places are here in the Valley. We had a handful of places. We've got places from like north, including Merkin. Merkin is one of those ones.
Yeah.
My dad was just in town and I was like, we got to go to Merkin. My buddy Brett Vibber is like do you guys know Brett? Have you ever met Brett?
Mm-mm.
No.
Another one. He's another one for the podcast for sure. So from what I understand, he taught Tamara everything she knows really about foraging.
Okay.
He was like an Eagle Scout and stuff. So he knows his stuff. He knows what time of the year, where to go for all these mushrooms, mustard greens, and all this stuff. So
Nice.
he's running the culinary program at Merkin now. They have that
Oh, okay.
incredible restaurant up on the hill. Right now, he's the executive chef, Merkin, but he kind of runs, the whole culinary operation of Merkin, 4-8, fried chicken, and then they have Queen Bee Cafe now. So Brett oversees all of them, and they're short. Their executive chef at Merkin. That's a beast. That's a beast. It's hard to keep to keep a chef there for him right now. But so for now, he's the main guy at Merkin. But we went up on Saturday, and we had bruschetta, but it had mustard greens that he had foraged that morning.
Wow.
Right. So those little things like that's to me, like if you really want to shoot of Arizona, I think Merkin is a really good one because they have their own greenhouse, they have their own farm, use a lot of, obviously their wine grows there. Yeah, I would say, obviously check out our book, check out our magazine, the podcast as well. We're trying
Let's call those out real quick. So, all right,
Sure.
the book. If they're going to find you on Instagram, where are they going to find you? Tell us.
At A Taste of AZ.
Okay.
So yeah, Any Taste of AZ. There's a influencer, Jen. She's awesome. She does a really good job, but she's Tastes of AZ.
Okay.
So we get them mixed up sometimes.
Okay.
Her stuff is more influencer style, and she does a really great job. Like she covers a whole range of places, and she's such a good person, and she does such good content. But we are A Taste of AZ.
Okay.
Follow us on Instagram. We sell the book on our website, which is tasteofaz.com. But we also sell it at some local places. We're trying to expand our retail spots, but local places like Urbana, Chula Seafood actually sells a ton of our books.
Oh, okay.
Monsoon Market and Phoenix sells a lot of them too. So
yeah,
quick and easy way to get it is go to a.com.
Okay.
You can subscribe to our newsletter too. We send one out every week with our podcast, events, and things that are going on. We'll share content, magazine articles and things like that through there. So we're working on the website too. What I really want is I want our website to be like the resource for Arizona food and beverage, right? So if somebody's coming into town, you tell them, hey, go to tasteofaz.com. And then, I want to have some guides up there where like, going to Tempe, here are 10 great places for tacos. Here's some 10 great places for pizza, 10 great places for this. So that's what we're working up to. We want to kind of be the resource to really make things easy for people to find great places to eat, drink.
I love it. Yeah.
When I tell people, and I've done this for several years now, is I tell people if you're coming here and you want some suggestions, email me, Eric at A Taste of AZ. I've given people personalized guides. I'm like, all right, do you like coffee? Do you like beer?
Right.
Do you like pizza? What kind of pizza you like? And then I'll personalize it. And,
That's so awesome.
Because each person's different, right? Some people are like, I like coffee, but I don't really care. They're like, oh, I love coffee. I'm a coffee snob. You gotta go to Peixoto, buy them accordingly.
Right.
But yeah, I just
cool.
enough about it.
When I have folks visiting here, they're like, one thing I always feel bad about, even though we always need the rain and I love it when it rains, and I have a farm, so it's especially important, but I always feel bad for people when they come and it's raining because they came here for the sunshine and all that. And we had guests that came here for a week that they didn't stay with us, but they were friends of ours and they stayed in Scottsdale, and it rained like 4 out of the 5 days. This was a few years ago. But I've always tried to find them those curated, they were with 2 teenage kids. So not everywhere might appeal to them, but those curated restaurant and experiential visits that you're providing are invaluable, because to me, it's like when we're welcoming someone into our state, you're welcoming them and it might be their first time and they have a higher expectation. And if we don't meet that as a state, it's just like a restaurant. The word of mouth spreads that, it was okay, but it was kind of vanilla. And I ate at the same restaurants I could have eaten at everywhere else. You
Right.
are providing more of a curated experience. And I think that goes hand in hand with what we talked about earlier, the authenticity of our dining and hospitality scene, and you're really helping to emphasize that. And I know so yeah, it's much appreciated. I just was on your website, and it's super easy to order the book and subscribe to your magazine. So I did, that's good.
There
Appreciate that.
there we go.
I like to do that while we're on the episode because it's like, this is how easy it is. We can do this and sign up for all this stuff and buy it at the same time.
There we go.
I know Pete, I know we're winding down, but I do have a question. And because I'm such a fan of when I met you at, it was a local First Arizona event, and that's where you showed me, the Brewing Arizona Bowl. And
Yeah.
I guess, so how did, how was that, how has that been received? And are you looking to dive deep into any other aspects of, the libation scene? Like, we've got great spirits going on now. I have a
Right.
plate in Sonoyta, and like Elgin Distillery is just this gem that I never even knew about. And it's got these award-winning rums and spirits. And so
Yeah.
are you kind of staying focused on the craft beer scene? Are you expanding out and talking about any other, uh, like any wine, spirits, or are you sticking more with the food and beer?
Yeah, more leaning towards kind of the food. I was known before we started. I actually stopped drinking last February, so I haven't drank in over a year.
Okay, gotcha.
Funny because we wrote a book about beer. I have almost 400 episodes focused on Arizona beer.
Right.
So just for just to kind of see what it felt like. I mean, it had been years since I had I'd gone a week or two without a beer. So I tested it out a little bit, and I felt great. I was sleeping better. I'm 46, so as I was getting older, I'd have a beer and I'm tired or a headache so I tested it out, and it's treating me pretty good. So
That's cool.
yeah, so
We sticking with that food thing. I get it.
it's a food thing, yeah, and really, so really what we're trying to do, we have the book, we have the magazine, we have our festival too. Next year for the festival, I'll get you guys a couple of tickets. We 2 years now we've done it, sold it out both years. Where we have about this year we had about 45 different food and drink vendors that all set up and gave out sample food. Right, so somebody comes in, they get the VIP $140. They get in at like noon. It's from like noon to 5. And once they get in, they get to sample all of this food. So this year we had like Clever Koi, we had Caldwell County Barbecue,
Yeah.
we had Fire at Will, we had Merkin, Chua Seafood, Bartoa. So we had all of these really great local places. So like my father-in-law is almost the perfect person for this, where he lives out in Surprise. He's like, I want to go to these places, but I don't know where to go. I don't know which place I'll like. So he got to try all of these different places, and he's like, okay. He's like, I love that. I'm
Yeah.
gonna go to Fire at Will, and we go out to dinner, right? So we're really looking to just kind of build up what we've kind of already got rolling, right? So for me, it's been interesting because I've always been like a creative, right? But with this, now I've got to put the business hat on. So the last couple of years have been more like business development, expanding. So I don't even go for most of the photo shoots. We have great writers, so I don't even have to write anymore. So, it's interesting because it's almost like now I've got the boring part of the job, which is building the business, right? So I'm looking forward to the days where I can get back out there and start eating and stuff.
Right.
That's a double-edged sword, right? Because I can eat until endlessly. So it's good that I'm not out in all these places.
Right.
So and it's kind of funny because craft beer was, I was super into it. That was kind of my social network a little bit. So now I'm relearning things. Right now, it's like, all right, I have a different social network now, and I have, but I need something else to like dig my mind,
Yeah,
something
yeah.
creative, right? So I'm glad you asked that question, Warren, because I'm looking for that, right? I'm like, all right, what is it that I'm going to really geek out about now? And is sourdough, right? Like, because I love sourdough and I love that process, fermentation and all that stuff. So I'm exploring, but I think I love the agricultural side of it. I really do. I love where the ingredients come from. And I'm starting to really get into the sustainability side of things, like, with Recycled City,
Yeah,
they're doing all the composting and stuff. So,
yeah.
um,
Yeah,
yeah,
Mill City, right. Yeah, yeah. Is it Mill
yeah,
City? Or, yeah, right. Well,
with-
listen, we're lucky that your attention and your focus is on the things that it is, because you're good at shaping the stories around information, and there's so much to be told about what's going on in our community that is being insufficiently told. And I'm excited to hear your interest in the agricultural side of it, because I mean, being from the DC area, and that Shenandoah Valley sort of agricultural scene, and he did a lot to connect that with the DC restaurant scene. And those are storied areas of that produced amazing things. And I think about like Stone Barns up in New York, in the Hudson River Valley, and its relationship sort of to its restaurant in Manhattan. That there are those places that I think magic happened, and things, there are stories that echoed into other communities. But I think that we will be that type of place. I think that there some of it's going on right now, and then some of it is deepening with, well, like the work that Don's doing, where he's looking at heritage grains, and how do we use what's grown here properly to make these amazing tasting breads. And clearly the world has recognized him with the James Beard Award. Like, it's produced great things in the world that the world has then turned back around and said, we agree, this is amazing. So
Well, not only that, but and Pete, sorry, I just want
yeah,
to
yeah,
interject with one thought, but Eric, as you look at building your interest in local agriculture, the way we speak about it and think about it is it really is improving the ecology around us. So you have 3 votes a day to really make a difference and an impact on our ecology here in Arizona, and that's breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
yes,
And you're really helping to help us as diners understand how we can do that, and further tying that to our agricultural community, especially the ones who are doing it right, like Arizona Grass Raised Beef. We're a
yes,
huge fan. He's been on the show, and what they're doing though is bringing our keeping our water in the ground, and
yeah,
with the way they raise their cattle, and the way that all these Sonoran wheats are being grown are just like the Sinagua malt. You're really we're making better use of our limited resources, and as a result improving our ecology. So I think that's an important aspect of what you're writing about, is to help consumers understand that when you pay for that meal, you're doing a lot more than just nourishing yourself. You're potentially improving, the entire state around you, and it's the environment as well.
yeah,
yeah. One thing I'd add to that too, and what I think is really cool is are how chefs are working with farms
yes,
to kind of create these like an experience, right? So you can have the story about, all right, here's where this ingredient came from. But when you have like a chef's dinner at Riba Farms,
yeah,
or
yes,
Slim
yes,
Allison does, a chef's dinner at Simple Farm, and you're like, all right, these grew, like you can see, those are the plants. We're going to walk you right over there. The stuff that you're eating right now came from here.
yeah, yeah,
So not just like, okay, the consumer's like reading on the menu, oh wow, this is Arizona beef. It's like, no, you can go here.
yes,
And
yes,
I think that's another thing that sets us apart too, is like, cloth and flame.
yeah,
Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, very familiar with them, right?
yeah. And so what they do is like, you are out in the wilderness. You get to have this amazing dinner, and it's a whole experience, and you feel like you can't get that in New York. right? Like, I mean, what are they going to close down Broadway and put up a table? You know,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
even if
yeah.
they did, it would smell like exhaust fumes. So you would go out in the Superstition Mountains and have this beautifully lit, you know, turn the lights off, look at the stars. Like,
Yeah.
you can't get that at a lot of other places. And so yeah, I mean, those are the things that we really love. It's bringing all the things that are amazing about Arizona, outdoors, and the rugged culture, and this amazing you know, landscape, and these plants, and you know, and you can bring it all together into this really, because you got to make it cool, right? You know, there has to be a cool factor to it. You know, and hang some meat up on a hooker for some wood fire.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
There. So,
Okay.
For sure. Well, Eric, listen, you were just amazing. So thank you for spending time with us. Maybe you'll come back again, you know, another time. We'd love to continue the conversation. I took Oren's lead. I signed up for the newsletter while you're talking. So
Thank you.
that's how easy it is for those of you listening. So thanks again for coming out, and we're gonna,
Thanks for
you
having me.
know, stay close in touch with you, follow everything you're doing, and who knows, maybe there'll be some ways we can work together in the future as well. So
Absolutely.
thanks
I
for
love it.
everything.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it, Eric. Great talking to you.
Yeah, you too. Good luck tomorrow, Oren. I don't know if I'll be able to make it, but
How can
for you and Don. So
I? Thank you.
yeah,
Appreciate it.
absolutely.